All right. Hey guys, welcome to another live demo where we build stuff. My name is Confident and I'm a developer advocate at Appsmith. Today I'm going to be your host, and today's demo is going to be really interesting because we're going to be exploring an alternative way of displaying the Appsmith. So many of you have used the table widget. In fact, it's one of our most popular widgets on Appsmith. You can connect to a database and directly display data in form of a table using a table widget. So that's one very popular way to display data. Another method that you may have also used in the past is using charts or graphs to display data. And recently, we also launched the list widget, which makes it possible for you to display data in form of a list. But did you know you can actually create a Kanban board to display data on Appsmith? I'm sure you don't. So today's demo is going to be about that. And in today's demo, I'll show you how to build this method of displaying data using JavaScript in Appsmith. To be clear, we don't have an official Kanban board widget. So we're going to be using a bunch of widgets that already exist on the platform, and we'll write some JavaScript to make all of this work. And I think that's just the beauty of Appsmith. You have a bunch of widgets, but added to that, you can also write JavaScript to manipulate the experience and build entirely new things. So that's exactly what we'll be looking at in today's demo. So if you're joining us live, I can see we already have a couple of people right now joining us live. Please say hello in the chat and tell us where you're joining from. I'd love to meet you. And it's also going to be the opportunity for you to meet others from countries that you haven't really visited. So tell us where you're joining in from and say hello in the chat. All right, so let's do a quick run through of what we are going to be building in today's demo. So I'm going to get my windows ready and try to share my screen so that you can see exactly what we'll be building into the demo. So let me go ahead to share my screen. All right, you should be able to see my screen right now. And this is the Kanban board app we are going to be building in today's demo. As you can see, I'm just going to click on hide to hide that. We have a Kanban board app, and this has 3 columns. You have the to-do column, you have a progress column, and you also have the done column. And because this is a Kanban board, we can actually move cards from one column to the other. Say, for example, I want to do, which is doing 18 days to the in progress column. All I need to do is just click on the move button, and you can see that has been moved to the in progress column. So this is exactly what we'll be building in today's demo. And of course, you can move it to the other status. For example, once you're working on this, you can move it to the done status, and you can see that this has been moved to the done status. So you also know the application is that it's really fast. Actually, we're using MongoDB for the backend. And of course, all of the changes that are made on the UI here is written to the database. But there's a way to actually make optimistic updates on the UI by making all of the changes locate into the network. So this is also something that we'll be taking a look at as we go along with building this application. And of course, this is a to-do app. Not only can you drag cards to different statuses, you can also edit them. So we have this nice edit button that opens up a modal. This is using the JSON form, so this form is generated on the fly, and it will let us edit the app, the to-do that has been opened up. So this is what we will be building in today's demo. The app right now is public, so I'm going to leave a link in case you want to check it out. And if you also want to import this application and build along, I'm going to be leaving a link right now in the chat so that you can do that. So I'm going to grab a link to the app, right? Hello, Mario. I can see we have Mario joining us. So guys, if you're joining us, please do leave a comment down below and say hello and let us know where you're joining in from. All right, so this is a link to the app, just in case you want to take a look at the build along live. So that's a link to the live preview of the app we're working on right now. And here is a link to the JSON of the app so that you can go ahead to import it and work along if you'd like to do that also. So I'm going to copy the link and paste it in the chat right now. All right, so that's a link to the preview and also to the JSON data for the app so that you can import it. And with that, I think we can get started. So today's demo is going to be structured in such a way that we are going to build the app live and then take questions at the end of the demo. But feel free to stop me at any point to ask questions that you come up. So I'll keep an eye on the chat for your questions. Please feel free to ask questions whenever they come to your mind. Then we'll also have a short QA session at the end of today's demo. All right, so with that, I think we can start building. So I'm just going to go back to the dashboard and let's go create an app. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is it to my database because we're using MongoDB for the database. So I'm going to go to data sources and let's connect this to MongoDB. All right, for the connect, I'm going to call this the to-dos database. And I'm just going to copy my connection string right here, save the URI connection string, yes, and I'm just going to paste in the string here, and we can test this, and I'm going to save that. So here we have the to-dos data source good to go. Now, the first thing I'll do is write a query to get a bunch of to-dos from the database. That query is going to be get to this query. I'm just going to quickly open MongoDB Compass to show you what I have right there. Oh, I'm only sharing a window, so you're not going to be able to see it. But once we do a quick fetch using this query, you'll be able to show the data we have coming back from the database. So this is going to be the get to do query or get to do's query. So let's call this get to do's query. And it's going to document in a collection. The collection is going to be the to-dos collection. And we want to grab all documents. So what I want to do here is make sure that we are sorting by the due date. So we have the due at, and I want to sort by the due date. I'm just going to grab all 20 of the documents we have in the database. So if I go ahead to run this and let's take a look at the response, you can see that we have a bunch of to-dos coming back. So this is the structure of the data we have from the database. A to-do item has a due at, which is the property we're sorting by right now. It also has a created at, has a description, has an underscore ID, which is an ID generated for the document by MongoDB. Then it also has a title, we have assigned to, and we have status, which would be used for all of the columns in the Kanban board app. So this is the structure of the data we have coming back from MongoDB right now. So now let's go ahead to build the UI for the Kanban board app, this data that we have coming back from MongoDB. So to do that, I'm just going to head over to the canvas. And we would need a bunch of widgets. So widgets, I'm just going to grab a list widget. All right, so we have a list widget. I'm going to place it right here. And let's make sure that this takes up the entire space. Okay, I think that's good. So for the list widget we have here, we want to display to-dos that have a status of to-do. So let's do that. We're going to grab the data coming from get to do data, and you can have all of that data shown up right here on the evaluate pane. But we want to filter by this and only display to-dos that have a status of to-do. So let's do a filter. We want to make sure that the to-do status is equal to to-do. Okay, so that's to-do. All right, so we can see that we have fewer number of tasks here. That's because we are filtering by status. And I'm just going to grab a quick text widget here, and let's call this column on the Kanban board the to-do column. So let's say to-do. All right, I'm going to make this a little bit large. And there we have a nice title for the to-do column. Now, to actually start displaying data inside of this to-do column, I'm going to delete the image widget because you would not need it. Then for the text widget we have here, let's just use this to display the title of the to-do. So this is going to be current item dot title. So this is going to be title. All right, and we can just make this truncated in cases where we have really long titles, so that we can click on this three dots button to take a look at the full title. Then we also want to display the due date for a to-do. So I'm just going to use this text widget here. So this is going to be current item dot due at, and you can see we have the due date there. But what we want to do is try to figure out how long from now is the due date going to be. We can use the moment library for this. So I'm just going to do a moment dot from now. So this is going to be moment passing the due date, and then we can do a dot from now. All right, and you can see that we have the due date showing up here. So I'm just going to add the text here saying due in 8 months, and we can add an alarm emoji here to make it look really cool. So this is going to be an alarm emoji. All right, and that looks really cool. So small tweaks I want to make to this widget is we are going to reduce the font size. All right, let's also go into reduce the font size, and that looks nice. I think I should just make this a little bit darker. That's the text color. So we have a nice small due date showing up on each task. Now the next thing we want to do is create buttons for navigation and also to edit a to-do task. So to do that, I'm just going to search for an icon button, and I'll place one here. All right, so we have the icon button. I'm just going to place it here, and this is going to be the icon button for the edit. So I'm going to call this search for the edit icon. All right, so we have the edit icon. Then one small change I'm going to make here is make sure that we have the background color of the button to gray, set that to gray, and here we have a gray edit icon. Last thing I'm going to do here is the navigation for the Kanban board, so that it's possible for us to move tasks from one status to the other, like you saw in the completed app. So in the completed app, we have these navigation buttons, the left-right navigation buttons. It makes it possible to move a card from one status to another. So for example, I can move this, which is due in 9 months, to the other status, and because it's sorted by due dates, you're not going to see it until we scroll down to here, and it's visible here. So let's create those buttons for navigations. We're also going to use the icon buttons to create those buttons for navigations. So I'm going to drag one in here, and this is going to be for the left navigation. So let's set the icon to left. All right, so this is the arrow left icon, and we need one more for the right navigation. All right, so I'm just going to move this here. Okay, I think that's too close to the borders. I'm just going to move it a little bit and move this to the sides just a little bit. Okay, so for this icon, I'm going to set it to the right navigation. So this is right. All right, and we'll use the arrow right icon, and this looks good. One small tweak we'll be making here is that since this is a to-do app, we actually still want to be able to edit this task. So when the edit icon is clicked on, we want to open up the modal to actually start making an edit to it to do. So I'm going to bring a modal widget here. All right, so we have a modal widget, which looks good. But that modal widget will be opened whenever the edit icon is clicked on. So let's go to do that. So for the edit icon, when this is clicked on, we want to open up a modal. So let's open a modal, and that's going to be modal 1, which is the default modal we just dragged in. So we're done with the UI for the first column in the Kanban board. The next thing we want to do is start building out the UI for the other columns in the Kanban board. And for that, we need list widgets. So we need a list widgets for the in progress status. So I'm just going to drop this right here. All right, and let's expand this. Okay, so it looks like I'll still need to extend this a little bit to the side, and that looks good. Then we need one more for the done column. So this is going to be for done. All right. So I'm just going to extend this a little bit, and let's bring this over. Same also goes here. I'm going to extend this columns having the same and width. Okay, so let's extend this, and that looks good. So we have 3 list widgets now. The first one, which is list 1, is for the to-do column. We have list 2, which will be for the in-progress column. So let me just grab a text widget real quick so that we can label these columns. So this is going to be for in progress. All right, and I can set this to a large text size. And we need one more for the done column. All right, so this is going to be done. And I can set this to a large text size. And then we have all of our columns done. Now, what I want to do is, since we already have the card set up for the to-do column, I'm just going to copy the contents of the card here and use that for all of the contents for the in-progress column and the done column. So for this card, for the first card, I'm just going to select all of the widgets and copy it over and head over to the list 2 for the in-progress status. And I'm just going to delete everything that was previously there, and let's make sure we're pasting the right statuses in, and you can see we have that here. So let me go ahead to extend this a little bit. So I might just need to do Ctrl-Z, extend this a little bit, and here I'll paste them back in. All right, so that looks good. I'm also going to do the same for the done column. So let's do that. I'll extend this a bit down. And let's go to delete the contents and paste in the new contents here. And that looks good as well. So we have all of the cards having the UI, but we actually don't have data in the in progress column and also in the done column. So let's go to fix that now. So I'm going to head back to list 1 and copy the filter we're doing here for the data. So I'm just going to copy this filter out, then head back to in progress. I'm just going to paste exactly the same thing here, but instead of filtering by status equals to do, we're going to filter here by status equals to in progress. All right, and that looks good. And we're going to do the same thing right here in the done column. So I'm going to paste that in right here, and we're going to filter by done here. All right, so that looks good, and we have all of the UI done for our application. So doing the UI was actually quite easy because all of the cards would end up having the same UI, so that was straightforward. But we would need to delete some of the extra buttons here. So we have the move left button here. We really don't have any other column to the left of the to-do card or to the to-do column. So I'm just going to delete this. And let's also delete this because we don't have any status to the right of the done column. So I'm also going to delete that. All right, so this is looking nice. And we can actually start writing some JavaScript to hook up the UI. So the first thing we want to do here is figure out a way to write JavaScript to be able to move a card from a particular column to the previous column, and also to move it forward if the right button is clicked on. So let's do that. We'll start by working on the move left logic. So we need to write some JavaScript for that. Let's start doing that. I'm just going to move this a little bit to the side here so that it looks even. All right, that looks nice. All right, so let's go to start doing that. We would need to create a JavaScript file, and this is where the fun part comes, because up until now, we've just been doing the regular stuff, connecting to MongoDB and displaying data in a bunch of widgets. But to actually make it have that Kanban-like interaction, we need to write some JavaScript. So let's go into write some JavaScript. I'm going to call this file utils. All right, and we are going to have a function to move cards to the left. So let's call this move left. All right, so this is going to take a to-do item. And because we are still building this item, I'm going to pass a default value of the item selected on 3, which is the done column. So we're going to pass in this item to default as we go ahead to build that function. So let's head back to the file. All right, so this is going to be list3.selected item. And if I do a quick return here, to do, you can see that we have a task that has a status of done right here. So what we want to do really is whenever a task is passed to the move left function, first we want to figure out what status it has, and then figure out a way to move the status to the previous status. So for a list of statuses we have, I'm just going to create an array. So let's call this statuses. All right, we have the to-do status, we have the in progress status, and we also have the done status. All right, so when a to-do is passed to the move left function, we want to figure out what status it has in this array. So for example, the to-do we are working on has a status of done. Then we want to move the status over to the leftmost status, which is in progress. So that's exactly what we want to be able to do in this function. So to do that, the first thing we want to do here is figure out a way to find the index of the status of the current to-do relative to the statuses array we have here. So I'm going to cut that out. So we're going to have a variable const I is equals to do. Actually, we want to do a this dot statuses. That is the statuses array. So we want to reference the statuses array. So it's going to be this dot statuses dot index of, and then we're going to pass in to do dot status. And if we can take a look at what we have in I. So if we run this, we should not have the right value. That's because move left really doesn't know what this dot status is because it's a static array. So what I'm just going to do is reload the application real quick. And then we can make sure that we have an item selected on the third list. So we have list 3, we have an item selected. Now we can head back to the function. And if we run this, you can see that this has an index of 2, which is this index we have right here. So what we want to do is figure out status. So its new status would be in progress. And to actually do that, we just have to subtract 1 from the current status in the statuses array. So to figure out the actual status, this is going to be this dot statuses. Right, and we have I minus 1. Right? We can go run this, and you can see that we have in progress coming back. So now we've been able to figure out the next status left whenever to do is moved to the left using the move left function. So this looks good, but we are actually not making this move right now. So we are just being able to figure out the change, but to actually make that move, we need to write all of these changes to the database. So let's create a new function here called update to do that would make all of those changes to the database. This is going to be update to do. All right, so this is going to be update to do. And this is going to take in a to-do's ID and also an object that has the update. So this is going to be an update. And what this function is going to do is that it's going to call a query with these parameters to make the updates to the database and reload the state of application by rerunning the get to do's query. All right, so that looks good. So what I'm going to do now is pause on writing the update to do function and then go to create a new query to actually make those changes to the database. So I'm going to go to data sources. Let's go to my to-do data source, and I'm going to create a new query. All right, so this is going to be the update to-do query. All right, and for the command, this is going to be update document. For the collection, this is going to be to-dos. All right, query, we want to make an update based on the ID that is passed into the update to do function. So this is going to be underscore ID equals to object ID. And then the ID is going to be passed as a param to this update to do query. So we can take a look at what we have in this dot params dot ID. So that ID is going to be fed into this query at runtime. So that would be query, but the actual update here would be a set. And for the object we're going to be setting, that's also going to be passed in the update object from the update to do function. So this is going to be this the params. All right, and we would have an update object which will be sent here at runtime. So that looks good. So we can head back here and actually call the update to the function. So this is going to be an async function. And what we want to do here is make sure we call the update to the function. So this is going to be await update to do dot run. And we want to pass an object that has the ID and also the update object that is going to be sent to the update to the function. So this is going to be update. And that looks good. When that's done, we also want to reload the state of our application. So this is going to be a call to get to dos so that we have the freshest state of data from the database shown on the application. So let's do an await here. Get to dos dot run. And that's going to reload the state of our application. Now this looks good. So let's go ahead to call the update to do function from the move left function. So what we're going to do here is that I'm just going to cut this out. Here we are going to call the update to do function. So this is going to be await this dot update to do. And then we want to pass in the to-dos ID, which will come from to-do dot underscore ID, and then the actual update, which in this case should always be an object. So we are making an object to the status of the to-do item. So this is going to be a status, and the new status is going to be what was previously returned from trying to figure out the next status using this piece of code right here. Before running this function, we want to make a check such that if the update is being made to the last to do here, which would have an index of 0, and of course it has no item to the left of it, we really don't want to make an update because the item to the left of it would be undefined. There's really no item here. So we want to do a small check here, make sure that we only run this function if I is greater than index 0. So we can always run this for options that are greater than the last in the array, because they'll always have items to the left of them. All right, so this looks good. So I can go ahead to the update to the function. So let's give this a spin. And this ran successfully. So this looks good. Let's head back to the UI and let's try to hook this up and see if everything works if we try to call it from the UI. So to do that, I'm just going to find a button that moves to the left. Say, for example, this button. And here, I'm going to call the update to do function. So let's execute a JavaScript function, the utils file, and this is going to be the move left function and not the update to do function. Then what we want to do here is pass in the current item or the current task that is being clicked on. So usually you should do something like current item here, and that should work fine. But right now there's a bug with using current item in an icon button widget, which this is. Here is an issue to the bug report in case you want to take a look. So I'm going to copy this and open this up right here. So right now there's a small issue with using current item inside of a button widget in a list widget, and it's being fixed right now. So a fallback right now would be to use the list name dot selected item. I'm also putting this in the chat in case you would like to take a look at it later on. So that's a link to the GitHub issue. So instead of using the current item in this case, what we're going to do is use the name of the list, which in this case is list3, and we can do a dot selected item, which is basically the same as using the current item. So let's go to do that. So I'm going to head back to the button and let's do a list dot selected item. All right, that should work fine. And I'm going to copy this over and also use that logic in the move left button we have here. So let's go to JavaScript. In this case, this will be list2. You can see this is list2 right here. So it's going to be list2 dot selected item. So let's head back here and let's do a list2 dot selected item. All right, so that looks good. We have a list2 dot selected item. So let's see if this works. So I'm going to try to move this task that is doing 18 days to the to-do column. So let's see if this works. I'm just going to hit on the button, and you can see that this has been moved to the to-do column. So we have the move left working, and I can actually also try moving this task that is due in 4 months to the in progress column, for example. So I can click on the button, and you can see that we have that task showing right here as well. So that's nice. We have the logic for the move left working. Now let's finish up the move logic by also writing a logic for the move right. So let's go to the JavaScript file. And here I'm just going to add a function called move right, and it's going to be very similar to what we have in the move left function. So I'm going to copy this over. Let's copy this over, and I'm going to paste it right here. All right, so this is going to be the move right function, right? And the only change we need to make here is that right here for the check, we want to make sure that if we're moving right, that item is not the last item in the array. That's the only check we want to make. So we want to make sure that the index of the item is always less than the last index on the array. And we'll do that check by taking a look at what we have in this dot statuses dot length minus. So this would always tell us what the last index is in the array. And if it's less than the last index, then we can move that item to the right. So for example, if the original item was a task having a status of to do, we can actually move it to in progress. But if the original status was to do, we can't move it to the right because there's really no item to the right of it. So that looks nice. Then the only thing we need to do here is make a change to add a plus. So we want to increment the index, and that would help us figure out the new status from the statuses array we have right here. So that's basically all we need to do. So let's head back to see if this works on the UI. I am just going to try to hook it up to this button right here. So let's go to JavaScript. I'm going to use the UI here, utils. This is going to be the move right function. And here we're just going to pass in the list one dot selected item here because this is going to be on list one. And we're also going to do that for the in progress column. And this is going to be list two. So I'm going to paste this in right here. Okay, that's not what I wanted to paste in. Let's head back. Oh, okay. So it seems that we don't have JS here anymore. So let's redo that. So this will be utils dot move right. All right. And we want to pass what we have in list one dot selected item. Okay, so I'm going to copy this over. Let's head back to list two. For the right button, I'm just also going to paste this in right here and edit this to list two dot selected item. So I'm going to try moving this task that is due in 18 days to in progress. So let's hit the move button. And you can see that this has been moved to the in progress column, and we can also move it to the done column by clicking on this button. And you can see that this also has been moved. So we have the logic of moving cards from columns working, and that's really nice. But you notice that it's actually really slow because each time we make a move, the entire application reloads because it's making a call to the network to write those changes to the database, and then a separate call is also made to get all of the changes from your database back to the application, and the application reevaluates the data and then displays it. So that takes a while to load up. But in the actual finished app, you can see that things are really fast. You can actually move tasks, and you see that there's really no loading state in the actual application. So we need to figure out a way to make those changes locally, and then changes back to the database asynchronously. So we want to make the changes right now on the UI, and then make a network request to make those changes to the database. So this is called optimistic updates. So we're going to have the UI having the latest states, and then make the network request, which will actually write that same state back to the database. So let's do that so that we speed up the performance of the application. So to do that, we need to make some changes to our JavaScript file. And what we want to start doing right now is making changes locally by writing all of that data to the Appsmith store. So let's create a function here called getTodos. All right, it's going to be a mirror of the getTodos query, just the same way we have the updateTodo function is a mirror of the updateTodo query. So let's create a getTodos function. This is going to be an async function, right? And here, what we want to do in this function is we want to make a call to the network using the getTodos query, take the response back and save it in the Appsmith store, because now the local store or the local state of the application would be the first source of truth so that we have a really performant application. So to do that, here I'm just going to write a call to the getTodos query. So I'm going to save that in the variable called todos. So this will be const todos equals to await getTodos.run, and we're saving that response into the todos variable. Then what I'm going to do is save that data into the store. So we have store value. We are going to save this in a key called todos, and we're going to pass the todos data here. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing for the getTodos function. Now, I'm going to head to the settings of my utils file. Make sure we're running the getTodos function on page load. So we're going to run this on page load. Then I'm going to head back to the getTodos function query and make sure that this is turned off. We're turning this off because we are actually now executing this query from the getTodos function. I hope that makes sense. All right, so let's go into finish building the app. So this function is done now, and I'm going to reload the state of my application. All right, and we should have that data inside of the store right now. So instead of reading the data directly from the query on the cards, for example, what we're going to do is read that data from the store. So this will be in appsmith.store.todos. And as you can see, we're reading that data from the store. It's exactly the same, but this is going to be more performant. All right, so I'm going to copy this over. All right, and let's do the same for the in progress column. So let's paste this in right here. And we're also going to do the same for the done column, which would exactly be the same. All right, so that looks good. Now we are reading data for the application from the store, and we're writing to the store using the getTodos function. So we can make changes to the updateTodo such that it works similarly to the getTodos. So what we want to do here is that whenever an update is made, first we want to make that update to the local store so that our application UI has the most recent changes, and then we want to go make a network request that would write all of the changes to the database. So this is going to be, first we want to make local change, then we want to make network request. So that's exactly what we want to do. So this is going to be easy because we're already storing that data in the store on line 5 right here. So what I need to do is just grab that data from the store, make the updates, save that data back into the store, and then we'll be done with making the local change. So let's do that. So I'll take const todos is going to be appsmith.store.todos. All right. The next thing we want to do here is try to figure out the index of the item that we are updating. So we can do that by writing a find index function. So this is going to be const I is going to be todos dot find index. All right, and we want to make sure that the int of the to do is the same as the ID of the item being updated. So this is the ID of the item being updated. That's going to be the index. All right, so now that we are able to grab the index, the next thing we want to do here is make the updates locally. So the item that is going to be updated would be to-dos at index. And here we want to make the updates locally. So we're going to create a new object for that item, spread the old values so that I have whatever was already there on the new object. This is going to be to-dos, index I. And then we also want to add the update so that the replaces was already there in the old to-dos object. So I'm going to spread the updates. All right, that looks good. And then the last thing would be to save the tools into the store. So this is going to be a store value, and this is going to be to-dos. And here we want to put the to-dos back into the store. And that's basically it. So we have this logic here for making the updates locally, and this should work really well. So now that that's done, one more thing to make here is that instead of calling get to dos query here, what we actually want to do is run the get to dos function, which is this function up here at the top. So this is going to be this dot get to dos. All right, and that should work really well. So this looks nice, and we can give this a try. So I'm going to head back to the UI, and let's try to make a change and see if this happens much faster than actually making a network request. So here, this card is doing 18 days. I'm just going to try to move it. And you can see that the card has been moved. And that was really fast because we did not notice any application loading state. So we can also move this one more time, for example, and you can see that this has been moved to the to-do column. So here we've been able to figure out a way to make those changes right here locally, and then make a network request that would write the same state to the database. But you might be thinking, if the network request fails, how do we get to handle that? Because it will mean that the state of the UI is going to be different from the state of the database. And the end user of your application might be working with old data or inaccurate data. So how do we handle a situation where we've already made the change to the local state of the UI, but there's a network request down the line, and we also want to be able to let the user know that, oh, the write to the database was not successful, and figure out a way to revert the changes that have been made to the UI. So to do that, it's actually really easy because we have all of the full capabilities of JavaScript right here on Appsmith. So what we can do is do a try-catch block to do a check and handle errors if they exist. So here when we're making the network request, we want to add a try-catch block to try to make the network request. If there's ever, what we want to do is let the user know that we could not make that right to the database, and then revert the state of the application to the original state so that the user is not working with inaccurate data. So I'm just going to cut this part out, and let's create a try block, right? And paste that in, right? Make sure it's indented. Then we'll have a catch block. And here we would catch the error. The first thing we want to do here is let the user know that an error occurred. So we can do a show alert and then pass the error message. All right, and give the alert type, set the alert type to error. All right, that looks good. Then the last thing we want to do is figure out a way to revert the state of the application. So to revert the state of the application, what we want to do is have a copy of the old state, which is on line 9 right now. So we want to create a copy of the old state and then set the to-dos in the store back to the old state. So to do that, let's create a copy of the old state. I'm going to save this in a variable called temp. So this will be const temp, all right? And here we're going to create a copy of the old state. If I did something like this, say temp equals to to-dos, or if I did something like this, temp equals to appsmith.store.todos, this is not going to create a copy of the old state. Rather, it's going to, the temp variable would hold a reference to the Appsmith store, which would actually always be the current state. So what we want to do here is create a real copy by using objects.assign, and we're going to create a new array here that would hold the state of whatever was in appsmith.store.todos. So this will be a real copy of the old state. And if there's ever an error, so what we're going to do here is in the block, we're just going to revert the state to the previous state and we'll be good to go. So this is going to be a store value, with the to-dos state. Then we're going to save whatever is in a temp variable, which will be the old state, back into the store. So this will be temp. And here we are able to revert changes whenever there's a network error. To test this out, I'm just going to try an error in the try block so that we're able to see what happens in the catch block that actually handles the error. So let's throw an error. So let's say throw new error. And I'm going to say there was a network request, there was a network error. All right, so we're throwing an error, and that would mean it's going to activate the catch block. So let's head back to the UI and let's try to run this. So I'm just going to try to make a move. So we have this task that is due in 2 months. I'm just going to try to move it to the to-do column. So let's that. So you can see that temporarily the change was made on the UI, but it was reverted back when we hit our error case. And you can see that we have the old state present on the UI. So this is one way we can handle errors and make sure we are always showing our users the correct state of the application when working with optimistic updates. All right, so this is also going to revert it back whenever there's an error. It's going to move and then revert the card back whenever there's an error. And you can see we have the error message showing up right there. So this works fine. I can go ahead to comment out the error block. So this should work fine. So we basically have the entire Kanban part of our application done. We can move to-dos. For example, I can move this to the done column, for example. Okay, I didn't click on that well. So I can move this to the done column, for example, and you can see that that has been moved. I can go on to move a bunch of tasks, and that's going to work exactly as you would expect. But the last thing we haven't done here is a way to actually update a to-do, because this is a to-do app, so we want to be able to update things or details on the to-do. So let's quickly do that. We have some time left, so let's quickly work on the update UI. So when a to-do is being edited, so we want to open up a modal, and here we want to have a JSON form that would actually build the UI for the update. So let's put in a JSON form here. So we are going to grab a JSON form widget. All right, that looks good. All right, so one thing I need to do here is let's head back to the board, and we want to make sure that whenever the icon button, the edit icon is clicked on, we not only want to open up the modal, but we want to store the current task that is clicked on as the active task in the store, and then use that in the data that would be used to build the JSON form. That's the source data. So before showing the modal, what we want to do is do a store value here, and we want to create a variable called active task or active do. All right, and we want to set the item on this list to be whatever, to be active to do. So this is going to be list2.selected item, and then we can go ahead to open up the modal. So I'm going to copy this over because we would need it in the other edit icons here. So I'm going to enable JS, paste that in right here, edit this to list1. And we're going to also do this for the last button we have right here. So I'm going to enable JS, and this is going to also be for list 3 because it's the last card in the Kanban board. So I'm going to click on the edit button here, and it's going to open up the modal. Then in the JSON form, in the source data, we can actually read this information from the active to do that is being saved in the store. So this is going to come from Appsmith appsmith.store.active-to-do. And you can see we have all of that information right here. So let's go into configure the UI for the updates modal. First thing I want to make changes to here is that I'm going to set the modal title to updates to do. All right, for the actual form title, I'm just going to delete this because we'll be using the other one. The next thing I want to do here is for the form styles, I'm going to disable the box shadow so that it just blends into the modal and you can't tell if this is an actual JSON form widget. All right, so let's do that. The next thing I want to do is hide the underscore ID because that is not going to be editable by the user. Then I want the title to come first. Then we have the status. Then we have the description. Then we have the assigned to. And lastly, we have the due at. The created at is not also going to be editable, so I'm going to hide that from the form. So here we have a nice form showing all of the details that needs to be editable. But we also need to make some changes to the form. So for example, the status input here is a text input, and ideally it should be a drop-down input where people can go select what status a task or a to-do should be in. So let's go to make that change. I'm going to go to edit that item and set the field type to a select widget. And now we're going to have options for the select widget. So for the options, remember we already have a statuses array from the utils file. I'm just going to use that to generate a list of options here. So this is going to be utils.statuses, and here I'm going to do a map. And for each status, I am going to return an object that is having a label and a value of that status. And here you can see we have a drop down having to do, in progress, and done. So that looks good. Last thing we want to do here, or next thing we want to do rather, is for the description, we want to make this a multi-line text input. All right, that's much better. We also want to make the assigned to right here a select drop down so that we can do select who it's assigned to, and that's going to take care of everything else. So I'm going to set the field type to a select here, and we're only going to have two options. For the first option, this is going to be my email. All right, and I'm going to copy it over. So we're also going to use that as the value. All right, and we're also going to have Viha's email here. So this is going to be Viha. And we're going to paste in the same thing here as the second option. All right, and you can see that we have this drop down here with two people that a task can be assigned to. Last change we want to make here is make sure that we have the due date set to a date input. So we have the date picker, and we can actually make this look really nice. For the default date, I'm just going to enable JS and set this to due at. And here we can go in to make this look nice by using the long date format. And here we have the form done. So to finish up the update workflow, because right now the submit button really doesn't do anything, we want to add a last function to the utils file where we can actually make that right to the database. So let's go back to the utils file, and here I'm going to add an edit to do function. All right, so this is going to be an async function, and it's not going to take any parameters. So what we want to do with the edit to do function is that we just want to go ahead to call the update to do function with all of the data from that form. So this is going to be await update to do, right? Here we need to pass in the ID of the to do, which we can grab from appsmith.store.active-to-do._id. And lastly, the JSON body or the object that is. So for the object, this is going to come from JSON form 1.form data, and that's really all we need to do here. Last thing I want to do is the modal after the update is done. So let's close the modal. So I can do here a close modal, and this is going to be modal 1. All right, so that looks good. I'm going to head back to the form. All right, so let's head back to the form. And for the submit button, I'm going to set it to run the function we just created. So here on the submit button right here, I'm going to set this to execute the JS function, and it's going to execute the edit to do function. So what I'm just going to do is, right now we have this task that is due in 3 months set to the in progress column on the Kanban board. I'm just going to move it to the to do column. So keep your eye out for a change on the to do column right here. So let's do that. So I'm going to move this back to do. Click on submit. And you can see that this has been moved back to do. You can see this has been moved back to do. So we are actually making all of those changes right here on the application in real time. And that's really nice. And basically, we are done with this application. So I'm just going to publish the application. Let's go deploy the application. And here we have the application visible. I should enable sharing and probably copy the link of the application, put it in the chat just in case you want to check out this application we just built right now. I'm sharing the link to this application in chat right now so that you can go check it out. And we are done with the to-do app. So we can move this card that is due in 3 months to in progress, for example. And you can see this has been moved. You can also move it to the done column, for example. And you can see that this has been moved right here. We can go into edit these to-dos, and that works just as well. So basically, we're done with building the application. Maybe we'll take a minute or two for questions and answers. I can see we have a bunch of questions here already on the chat. So I'm going to scroll up to take a look at your questions. Please do type them in right now in the chat so that I can take these questions that you have. And like I mentioned earlier, this app is available as a JSON exported app. So you can actually import it to take a look at all of the JavaScript we have been writing so far. So this is a link to the GitHub repo where you can download the JSON for this application, import it, and take a look at all of the JavaScript we have written so far. So I'm pasting a link to the GitHub repo so that you can also do that as well. So I'm going to scroll up and take a look at some of the messages we have in the chat right now. Okay, so we have this request here from Casio. It says, make a playlist with sequence on how to set up an e-commerce, for example, or something like that, maybe a sales app. Okay, so you're making a request for building an e-commerce app with Appsmith. Okay, so that's a nice request. I am going to take off it and then try to work on a video series for e-commerce apps. But I already have a bunch of these, so I'm going to also try to leave it in the comments after the end of this live stream so that you can see already existing examples of e-commerce apps that you can build with Appsmith in a video format. All right, so we have this comment from Mario. He says using JS objects makes the job easier. Yes, for sure, it makes it really easy to write JavaScript. And I'm so glad that we have JS objects right now. Do you mean the screen sharing was not clear? I can see a message here saying bad image. Do you mean there's some issues with my screen share? I'm not sure what this means. Okay, but if you have any other questions, guys, or feedback for the team, please do share them in the comments. I'm going to leave a minute as we do that. And don't forget, if you would like to see a live preview of this app, I'm going to also leave a link right down below so that you can go check it out. Also, we've been more features. So if you'd like to take a look at what is new right now on Appsmith, feel free to go check out our release notes. So I'm going to leave a link below. That's going to be in GitHub, in our GitHub repo. So we have that here. I'm just going to grab our releases. And I'm going to copy this over so that you can see what's in latest release that's available on Appsmith today. So I'm just going to paste that in right here for you to take a look at all of the releases and new features on Appsmith. All right, I see a comment of appreciation from Mario. He says, thanks for the great workshop. I love Appsmith and see huge potential for applications. Yes, thank you very much, Mario. As you use Appsmith, please feel free to share feedback with the team so that we can make it better for you and enable you to build more complex apps on the platform. Okay, I can see a message here from Mario. Unfortunately, in our company, we have a problem with Appsmith and proxy configuration. Due to this, we can't use Appsmith. Oh, that's a bit unfortunate. I hope every day for a release that solves the problem so we can get started. Thank you so far for the great job. All right. I would love to learn more about what this issue is, but please feel free to shout out to me on Discord or send a message on Discord so that we can help with troubleshooting this issue and help you out. All right. So if we don't have more comments, that'll be the end of today's live stream. It was nice having you all here. Please feel free to check out our releases, and I'm going to see you in the next live stream. All right, guys, take care. Bye-bye.